Listen. Okay, hi, hello. My name is Chelsea Deanne. Nice to meet you. I'm a paranormal investigator who likes to tell ghost stories. Listen. I really like scary movies. I have liked scary movies since I was 5 years old, living with my mom and grandma watching scary movies on a Friday night when I was absolutely way too young to be watching some stuff. But it was the greatest thing in the entire world. And I loved it so much. And it's just such a warm spot in my heart for scary movies, okay? I have a particular affinity for the subgenre of horror that is based on a true story. And I don't know if it's because I essentially lived my own horror story when I lived in the house that I did growing up. That sounds very dramatic. I would love to tell you about my experiences there someday. Let me know if you want to hear about that. But that I think that's what did it. And that I have this soft spot in my heart for that subgenre because I love the idea that someone else experienced what I did. And it sounds twisted. That sounds really twisted. But it makes, I don't know, it's just it's a very isolating thing to grow up in a haunted house, okay? But it's like not a thing that a lot of people could relate to. So then when I see a scary movie of someone like having experienced weird shit in their house growing up and being scared and whatever, ew, I don't want to talk about my feelings. Listen, that's just a thing. Okay, I like scary movies. I specifically like scary movies that are based on a true story. That's all you need to know. But I know enough about how things work in Hollywood to know that stories are twisted in some ways. There are creative liberties that are taken. There are creative liberties that have to be taken to make a story interesting, to complete a story. A story has a beginning, middle, and end. Hi, I'm an educator. I have that specific line drilled into my head because of third grade literature. Thank you so much for coming to my TED Talk. So yeah, there are things that need to be done to ensure that your story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Otherwise, it's not a compelling film because it's not a compelling story. Okay? There is no end to my real life haunting because ultimately I just don't live in that house anymore. And that's the end of the story. And that sounds exciting. There needs to be a big climax. There needs to be a big finish. So I know that there are creative liberties that are taken. And it always leaves me very interested to know ultimately what the actual chain of events are in movies that are based on a true story. In the true story upon which those stories are based. That is a very, very long-winded way of me introducing this, which there is a very famous film that is allegedly based on a true story, and that is known as A Haunting in Connecticut. And I happen to know the true story from beginning, middle, and end, as much as it has the true story behind A Haunting in Connecticut and the conspiracies and potential hoax behind that film as well. So that's what I want to talk about today. Holy shit, I can't believe it took me that long to get that out. I'm so sorry. Let's just get into it. So in the year 1985, a 14-year-old boy named Philip Snedeker was living with a diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma. He was traveling from his home in upstate New York to the University of Connecticut Hospital, which is in, you guessed it, Connecticut. Not like a chill commute. Like it was 4 hours one way. So an 8-hour round trip. I believe, you know what? I'm not even going to say that I know or pretend to know how long a chemo treatment takes. Because I in the past have had a treatment in which I was receiving treatment in the same room as chemo patients. And they were there long before me and they were there long after me. I just know that it's a long process. It's not pleasant. It's brutal on the body, and so he's ill and making 8-hour round trips for these cancer treatments. So things are not going well for Philip. Like, he was wiped out. He was totally exhausted. So his parents, Al and Carmen, made the decision that they were going to move closer to the Yukon hospital. They were going to move their 4 children, Philip, Bradley, Alan Jr., and Jennifer. They were going to move them down to Connecticut, and they were going to be closer to this hospital. They kind of searched all over the place for places to live, and a lot of spots either refused to rent to them for whatever reason, or that didn't have enough bedrooms, or it was out of their price range. So when they found 208 Meriden Avenue in Southington, Connecticut, which was a large white colonial home split into duplex style housing, they kind of jumped on it. They had the apartment on the lower floor available to rent, and it was gorgeous. It had beautiful hardwood flooring. It had very ornate paneling all along the walls. I am an absolute sucker for architecture, so even that statement alone gets me real jazzed. But it also had 2 bedrooms upstairs and a basement that could be converted into 2 more bedrooms. So it was large enough for their family, and it was in their price range, and it was minutes away from the hospital. So it was like, it was perfect. They've got a newly renovated apartment with all of this detail that it just like, it's great. So they signed a lease immediately, and they started to move in. Al and Carmen, one day before they actually moved in, they were just in the home kind of getting things ready, taking a tour, all that good stuff. They were downstairs checking out the basement because they wanted to renovate it to make it 2 separate bedrooms for their oldest sons, which would include Philip. And while they're down there, they found a separate room that was kind of divided off from the rest of the basement. And they go inside, and they found coffin handles, a gurney, a casket lift, toe tags, a blood drainage pit, and a whole lot of other things that kind of raised some red flags, I guess you'd say. So it turns out that before the home was split into a duplex and rented out, it had operated for decades as the Hallahan Funeral Home. Considering how young their children were and the particular illness that their son Philip was stricken with, Al and Carmen agreed that it would be best if they didn't tell their children this particular piece of the home's history. However, the very first indication that something was off in this house came before they even moved in. Carmen was in the home kind of cleaning. She was mopping the floors, getting things ready before furniture got moved in. And as she was mopping, the mop water suddenly turned a dark blood red and stunk of decaying flesh, which is super casual, no big deal, apparently, because she just kind of moved on from that one. I genuinely don't know how you explain that one away, but they did. And the family moved in. There are some sources that say it was just the Snedeker family as listed previously. And then a lot of accounts actually say that the Pickmans, that was my last family. The Snedekers' 2 nieces moved in with them as well. But things are starting off strong on night 1. Because Philip was in the basement, because it was his bedroom, and he feels an icy chill in the air, like see your breath cold. And then a disembodied voice floated out from the dark and called him by name. He obviously freaked, so he told his parents, like, hey, something's calling my name in the basement, not really cool. And they were like, hey, you're hallucinating. Don't worry about it. It's cool. It's chill. That excuse didn't work very well, though, when Philip's brother, that he shared a room with, started to report the same things. That he would hear a voice calling out from the dark for Philip in a deep, raspy tone. He said it sounded almost as if it was grinding in the throat of the speaker as it came out. Spooky. both of the boys also began to see a shadowy figure in the morgue room that would pace back and forth and back and forth. I don't know why I'm being so spooky when I'm literally home alone tonight. Oh my god. I'm never home alone. This is so scary. So then Philip began to see a full-bodied apparition of a man in a pinstriped suit with white hair that would skulk around in the dark and stare at Philip when he tried to sleep. For obvious reasons, sleep was hard to come by. So come morning, the boys would be found camped out on the couch in the upstairs living room. And then it wasn't just the boys that were seeing things. Their little sister started seeing a woman in a white dress appearing in her bedroom that would stand above her bed and stare at her without saying a word, which I hate so very, very, very much. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. No, thank you. So Carmen, the mom, said that she had sworn to never tell the children about the home's history, that they were never going to tell the kids, but somehow Philip had figured it out within the day of moving in. So she is convinced that the other kids are seeing things because Philip told them that this used to be a funeral home, and so obviously it's haunted, and that's why the kids are seeing stuff. However, the spirits in the house did not seem to like being brushed aside so easily, because they started to go after Carmen. When she would set the table for dinner, she would get all the plates out, all the forks, all the knives, all the spoons, and the napkins, and the glasses, and then she would turn around to go into the kitchen, turn back into the dining room. Everything would be unset. Not a single thing on the table. Everything would be back exactly in its place within seconds. And obviously, spooky. Don't love. Not about it. Don't like it. Burn the house down. No, don't do it. Don't do it. But actually, obviously spooky. Girl saying things, spooky. Brother saying things, spooky. However, whatever was in the house very clearly had its eyes set on Philip. Philip had become so afraid of the house that he actually begged his parents to not make him stay in the home anymore. He wanted to move full-time into the hospital. And hospitals are not a fun place to be. At all. I never want to spend another night in a hospital. Worst experience. That's true. That's not true. Pretty bad experience, actually. Anyway, we don't need to talk about that. So, for him to want to stay in the hospital full time, it's gotta be kind of bad at home, you know? However, his parents did not let him do that. So, he had to stay in the house and appeared to succumb to the energy of the home. He started to wear all black and leather, and his personality grew very dark, and his interest turned to that of the occult, which kind of sounds like me in 9th grade, but we don't need to talk about that. I have a hand tattoo. That's all you need to know about me. Philip started telling his mom that he was seeing a second entity, so not just the man in the pinstripe suit. He was also seeing another man that had long black hair that hung all the way down to his hips and had very dark, frightening eyes. He spoke to Philip every single day, sometimes just calling out his name and other times blatantly threatening him, saying that he was going to do horrible things to him, horrible things to his family. Philip's thoughts began to grow very violent. His actions grew very violent. He started to play very cruel pranks on his family. At one point, he actually locked one of his little brothers inside of a chest, and then like a chest of drawers, like a big ol' what the Aristocats got put in. And then he completely forgot about it. had no recollection whatsoever of doing it or leaving him there or anything. He also allegedly assaulted one of his cousins that was living in the house, and even went so far as to break into the neighbor's house to steal a gun, which he then confessed he was going to use to hurt Al, which is either his father or stepfather, depending on the source that you quote, but doesn't matter. So at this point, his parents finally decided that Philip was not safe to be living in the house, so they sent him away, which is another place where things get iffy. He either went to a psychiatric facility or he went to live with another relative, but either way, after leaving the house, he stopped reporting voices. However, the rest of the families that was still living in the home, things got not great for them. It seems, according to their story, that without their preferred victim of Philip in the home, they started to prey on everyone else. All of the children in the family started to see these apparitions that had only been coming to Philip before. They started to hear phantom footsteps throughout the house and voices everywhere when no one would be home. They would have lights that flicker and come on by themselves. They would have this happen so frequently that they actually took the light bulbs out of the lights in the house, like completely removed them from their sockets, and then somehow light would still be coming from them. Don't like it. Thank you. The home sporadically began to reek of rotten meat and human feces. Carmen and Al's bed would vibrate and pulse as if it had a heartbeat. They actually had a bunch of, they would have friends come over, family come over and be like, lay on this bed. And they'd be like, you know why? And they'd be like, lay on the bed. And then they would lay on the bed and it'd be like, oh my God, the bed's breathing. And it was weird. And they were like, yeah, thank you so much. Great. And this happened for years. Because, again, it's not very realistic to just move out of a house because you have a ghost. Because people aren't going to be like, okay, break the lease because you have a ghost. That's not how the real world works. So they were stuck there, and all of this shit just kept happening, and they had to just live with it. So they lived there for a long time. They were frequently spotted outside by neighbors standing on their porch in the middle of the night, which I relate to so hard because not every time, sometimes I was brave, thank you. But almost every time I was left home alone, it was scary. And I didn't like it. So I'd go sit on my front porch till my parents came home. And now I'm a ghost hunter. I am a pretty hardcore paranormal investigator. And now I'm I used to sit on my porch in the middle of December because I was too scared to go inside. How cute. But yeah, for years it went on, and then it actually started to get worse. It started to get physical, and not in a sexually violent way. So I'm gonna tread real careful right now. And also, there is one particular thing that the thing I'm about to discuss that is my actual nightmare, and I wish I was kidding. So one night, Carmen, mom, is having a shower, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the shower curtain just wrapped around her, and it was squeezing in tighter and tighter and tighter, and it was against her face, and and she couldn't push it away, and she was the only thing I could think about in the moment was this house is trying to kill me. It's going to kill me. I'm going to die. There's a show that I really liked growing up that was called A Haunting, and it was true stories told by the people that lived it. Okay. And they did a special episode on this story, which is where I'm getting most of my information because it came directly from the Snedekers. They reenacted this scene, and it scared me so bad. So bad. I had literal nightmares about it. And now when I'm taking a shower, if the shower curtain so much as touches my leg, I'm it scares me so bad. It gives me the ick. I don't like it. I don't like it. And it's because of this. I watched this episode way too young, and now I'm traumatized. Thank you. But then, yeah, it's things are gonna get really bad for a second, and I'm real sorry about it. But this is the story as it was reported. Okay, thank you so much. So the entity, or one of the entities within the home, started to sexually assault members of the family. So one night, one of Carmen's nieces was in bed with Carmen because she was like fucking scared. And she suddenly just like kind of like grabbed onto Carmen and was like, "Do you feel that?" And Carmen was able to see the like physical outline of a hand sliding up the inside of the girl's nightgown, but she like couldn't do anything to like stop it. And then the niece claims that it went further, is all I'll say about that. But during these episodes, she would hear disembodied laughter, which I hate. Like, I double hate, triple hate, a million times hate that. This is real bad. Okay. Carmen claimed to experience this same kind of activity as well, and even Al, the dad, had this happen, and they would hear 1930s era mood music preceding these assaults. So the family finally decided that like they couldn't do this anymore. They needed help. So they reached out and naturally wound up with the Warrens, because this is a paranormal event that happened within the Northeast, and the Warrens invite themselves to all of those. So Ed and Lorraine, I have a bit of disdain for the Warrens, if you couldn't tell. Ed and Lorraine, which is a very famous demonologist / clairvoyant duo whose stories inspired the Conjuring films. They spent 9 weeks in the Snedeker home, which is possibly the longest time that they ever spent investigating something before getting kicked out. Anyway, they allegedly experienced everything that the Snedekers had reported and more. They reported being slapped, tripped, punched, and pushed. And when asked about what they encountered at the location, the Warrens rated the possessing entity as a 9 on a scale of a 1 to 10. During their investigation, John Zaffis also joined them, who is a famous paranormal investigator, I guess. He is most well known for his show, The Haunted Collector, which was on Sci-Fi, where they'd like go in and investigate a place and then decide that there was an object that was causing the haunting, so then they'd take the object out of the place and put it in a museum, I think. Okay. He now has over 40 years experience as a paranormal investigator. He's pretty well respected within the paranormal community. So, do with that what you will. But he claims that while in the house, he experienced very dark occurrences as well, including one night he was studying notes at the dining room table. The room suddenly became extremely cold, and John could feel a presence around him. He looked up the stairs and saw an apparition kind of starting to manifest, like forming, and he got this smell that was so disgusting that he couldn't bear to breathe because he wanted to throw up. And as the apparition continued to manifest, he could hear a sound that sounded like 1,000 flapping wings coming from behind it. The entity moved down the stairs toward him, and as it did, it allegedly spoke to John and said, "Do you know what they did to us? Do you know?" Whatever. Okay, listen. Lorraine Warren used her abilities to speak with the dead and was able to determine that the morticians who had worked in the funeral home previously had committed necrophilia and other terrible things, and that these horrible deeds committed in the home had drawn demonic energies into the property, and that's what the Snedekers were experiencing. So 3 priests were called to the home, one after another, like not at the same time. They called one and he quit, and they called one and he quit, and then they called another. Because the first 2 claimed that they felt such a heavy, frightening presence that they ran away. They fled the home. They were like, bye, can't do it. Sorry, can't help you. Bye-bye. So they... And then there was a 3rd priest who is, as of yet, unnamed, that allegedly finally performed an exorcism and relieved the house of its evil once and for all. But here's the thing. I told you we were going to talk about a conspiracy. We were going to talk about a possible hoax. So, since the story was like publicized and became a movie and all of that, since it went public, there's been a lot of speculation about the credibility of it. And the reason that there's speculation is because the actual testimony of the Snedekers themselves, like, changes every single time. And so, like, every time I, within the story, was like, well, it was this, or it was this, or it was this, that's literally because I just hit my knee and bumped my... Anyway, it was because the story that the Snedekers themselves told changed. They always seem to get caught up in the very beginning of the story when they were learning about their home, because they said that they did not know when moving in that the home had been used as a funeral home. They claimed that this detail was kept from them until they discovered it themselves by coming across the equipment in the basement. However, Daryl Kern, who was the guy that owned the house and was their landlord, therefore, was like, yeah, no, they made that up because they were absolutely made aware before moving in that this was a funeral home. I told them the whole history. And another cute little detail, they had an upstairs neighbor the whole time in the same house. Because remember, it was a duplex. So there was someone else living in that house the entire time. And she says that she can vouch for the Snedekers knowing the home's history because she worked for the real estate agency that the Snedekers used to find the house. And so she's like, I know exactly what they knew and didn't know about this house. And they knew that it was a funeral home. Also, again, she lived in the house. She lived in the house. The same house. Lived in it. At the same time. The whole time. And, like, there was just all of these things happening, allegedly, downstairs. And then just, like, one staircase up, she was there also. Heard nothing the entire time. Saw nothing the entire time. Like, she didn't even hear the Snedekers. Like, okay, I'm just saying I'm being judgmental. I wasn't there. I don't know. However, I'm saying that if those kinds of things are happening, don't you think you would hear something? At least from the people themselves? You don't think they kind of like yelled or were frightened or like, one of those once? She's like, I didn't hear fucking shit, dude. I don't know. Listen. So, Daryl Kern, the landlord, he has publicly said that this entire case is a hoax. He was interviewed by a local paper about it and said, quote, it's a fraud, it's a joke, it's a hoax, it's Halloween. So there's that. But this one I think is juicy. Okay. So the Warrens got involved, right? Ed and Lorraine, they were there. And I obviously have feelings about the Warrens. So do with that what you will. But I'm just saying, Ed loved to turn their cases into books. So they hired a writer named Ray Garton to write the book about this particular case. It's called A Dark Place. It came out in 1994. Oh, excuse me. It's called In a Dark Place. It came out in 1994. And let me tell you something. Ray Garton has some opinions, okay, about the Snedekers, about this case, and about the Warrens, which I appreciate. So he is actually quoted as having said, and again, a quote, I have the notes right in front of me, they're right there. He is quoted as having said, "I became very frustrated. It's hard writing a non-fiction book when all the people involved are telling you different stories." That sounded opinionated. That sounded judgy. I'm very sorry. That's not immersive. I'm not doing a good job as a storyteller. Listen. He says that as he tried to gather all the necessary information, fucking shit, dude. My cat just smacked my foot and it scared me so bad. Okay. He says that as he was trying to gather the information for the book, he found that the accounts of the individual Snedekers never meshed. Carmen was frequently asked why the family never left the house, considering the extremity of what they were experiencing. And every single time, her answer changed. Sometimes she said that it didn't matter if they left or not. The happenings seemed to follow them everywhere they went. Other times she said that she actually was completely unaware of the hauntings and that only the children experienced it. Which, okay. And then, yeah. So the neighbors said that they used to see the family out on the front porch, that they were like fleeing the house in the middle of the night. They're so scared, they're so spooked. But there's a neighbor named Joan Mirabelle, and she was like, yeah, I'd see them outside in the middle of the night, like all the time. But whenever asked what they were doing, they said, we just can't go back inside yet. And they apparently were like laughing and joking, and they seemed totally chill. But from both sides, it's weird, right? You'd think if you'd experienced like the most traumatic haunting ever, you wouldn't be like laughing and joking about it. But also, like, why are you standing outside in the middle of the night and being like, yeah, we just can't go inside? It's your house. What do you mean you can't go inside? So, it's weird either way. But that same neighbor, Joan, also says that, well, first of all, she said that she thinks the family made the entire thing up. But she also said that one time she saw a mysterious green glow coming from the window in the house, and then claims that she was stung by an invisible force when she came inside the house to visit. But then she also said that every time she saw Carmen on TV, that the story seemed bigger and more involved. So I don't know what Joan thinks, and I don't know what I think of Joan. But here's the thing. Okay, so it's gonna get dark again. So we had the things that were happening that were not good, right? I'm not being weird about it to make light of it. I've been there. I just don't like treading in that territory, so I'm tiptoeing around it. And if you have a problem with it, keep it to yourself, because I'll cry. So the entity in the house is most well known for its particular style of assault. Okay? That's what we're gonna call it. There are allegations that I won't get into that insinuate that it wasn't a ghost but a person doing the assaulting, and that potentially there's a theory that they recall it as a spiritual encounter because they don't want to live with the reality of what it was. That's all I'll say. But to get more into the Warrens' involvement in the case, first and foremost, they claim to have arranged for an exorcism to be performed at the house, right? They called in 3 different priests, and the 2 of them ran away, and then blah, 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 blah. They have no evidence to back up this claim, and despite what movies would have you think, they don't just, like, hand out exorcisms willy-nilly. Like, there's a lot of red tape to get through to get an exorcism. And so it either wasn't an official exorcism, or there was no exorcism. Like, it's not that. Hi, former Catholic. What's up? Anyway, Ed Warren was questioned on television about the exorcism, and my cat just ripped the shit out of my chair. All he would say is that Father A did it. And people will be like, who's Father A? And he's like, you know Father A. He's been on TV. He's on TV all the time. He's Father A. Can you stop? But then there was an interview where they kind of like pressed him about it. And they were like, that doesn't really give us anything. Do you have anything else? And he was like, crazy mad. And he said, my cat's insane. He was like, Father A, that's the name I give you. I don't have to give you anything. You don't need any information from me. I don't have to tell you nothing. That was my attempt at a Northeastern accent. But then he was like, okay, so you can find evidence of priests being here. There's official records from the chancellery. Fucking look it up, basically. But I did. Girl, I did look it up. The Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Hartford, which covers the place where the Snedekers would have lived in Connecticut, said that no officially sanctioned exorcism had ever taken place there. But Ed kind of, like, wouldn't let it go. Like, he accused one of the Snedekers' neighbors of being paid by the landlord to dispute the Snedekers' claim. Like, to go on TV and be like, no, they're lying. And then he went on TV with a skeptical investigator whose name was Joe Nickel. And he was, like, going off on this guy. And he, like, completely berated him, talked over him, was just arguing the whole time. And then according to Nickel, off stage, he swore like a sailor and threatened him. And that's just not what a good Catholic does. I'm just saying. But then the author guy, Ray, he was interviewed for Horror Bound magazine. And he said in the interview that he once went to the Warrens and was kind of just like, hey, every time I talk to somebody in this family, they give me a different story. Every account is different. What do I do? Like, I'm having a hard time writing this book because I can't keep the story straight. And according to Ray, Ed turned around and said, quote, oh, they're crazy. All the people who come to us are crazy. You think sane people would come to us? Which is a little over the top. A little over the top. Because I do think that the Warrens genuinely might have at least somewhat believed in what they were doing. I know I'm very confident that Lorraine believed in what they were doing. Ed, somewhat, at least, I think. But this quote, I'll believe a little bit more. He apparently just, like, talked mad shit on the Snedekers and then told Ray to use what works from their testimonies, and for the rest, just make it up and make it scary. And he's, like, in print quoting this. So, I mean, obviously not Ed, but Ray about Ed. He, like, he's confident enough to go after a fucking slander case, you know? But whatever. So, a lot of people have drawn a connection between the Snedeker family story and the story of the Amityville Horror, which, again, the Warrens were involved in. Because the Lutz family really profited pretty handsomely from selling their story. And according to the landlord, to Daryl, he said that the story of the haunting seemed to get real crazy and over the top right around the time that the Snedeker family was facing eviction after getting behind on their rent. There's also been a lot of parallels drawn between the Snedeker story and the story of a 1982 movie that was very, very popular called The Entity, in which the female character was repeatedly assaulted by, well, an entity in the name. But one of the nieces was like, yeah, what I experienced was basically exactly like that movie. And then they both admitted that they watched the movie a lot. But I don't know. I don't know what I think. Honestly, I don't know what I think. I think I think that the Warrens are full of beans. But, I don't I would love to hear what your opinions are on this story. So if you want to have a little discussion, a little debate, a little talk, drop that in the comments and I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Otherwise, thank y'all. Sorry for clapping. Thank y'all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, maybe like my video because that would make me happy. And yeah, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much if you stuck it out through this whole thing. Love y'all. Bye. My name is Baby No Money. Let me tell you again. What is this? I just say it's a knuckle. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Medical people help.